Hurricane Idalia is here. The first hurricane in 2023 for Florida. Are you ready? I'm not sure if I am actually. As of this recording, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis declared a state of emergency in 46 counties, a broad swath that stretches across the northern half of the state from the Gulf Coast to the Atlantic coast. The state has mobilized 1,100 National Guard troops who have 2,400 high water vehicles and 12 aircraft at their disposal for rescue and recovery efforts. Tama International Airport and St. Pete Clearwater International Airport said they would close on Tuesday, which is today, the day of the recording. And the Sunrail commuter rail service in Orlando was being suspended. So these events will obviously impact Florida and non-Florida residents as well, as the storm starts to make its effects known to Florida sometime on Tuesday and make landfall Wednesday morning. I put together some information that you might find helpful, useful, or even entertaining. Let's get into these stories now. So as of this recording, Hurricane Idalia is passing to the west and north of Cuba, going north-northeast. This is a spaghetti model view, and there is a consensus that this storm will hit Florida sometime Wednesday morning between Tampa and the Panhandle there, going northeast into Georgia. Of course, that can definitely change, and we've seen hurricanes in the past in Florida slow down, veer right, veer left, goes maybe even a little bit south. So, this is just an expected projection at this point. Expect the unexpected, as they say. And what's interesting about this is if you look at this next view here, there's a consensus that it's probably going to be a category 3 when it hits land. This could also be a category 4, according to some estimates that I've seen as well. Again, between Tampa and the Panhandle here. And this is a view of the winds that are going to pick up here. So Wednesday, 8 a.m., expect winds about 115 miles per hour in this zone here. And, most of Florida here is going to be windy anyway, but I think this is the peak in the track here. And then Wednesday at night, it's going to slow down to 65 miles an hour and then slowly lose strength. Now here's a view for the storm surge. So this is 7 to 11 feet in this area here on the western part of Florida, 5 to 8 feet a little further south there. And yet another view is the rain accumulation. Here's a broader view of not only Florida, but Georgia as well. So 5 to 8 inches is in the red area here in the Tampa zone here. And then you go further to the east here towards Orlando, you're going to start to see 3 to 4 inches. And then in the yellow here, 2 to 3 inches. So it's going to be pretty devastating in that sense. And then the rain potential is just another view of that. So Sanibel Island is going to get 4 inches. Punta Gorda 2.6, Cape Coral 2.4. So yes, a lot of rain is going to be dumped, which is going to be a good thing too. It's very hot too this time of year in the summer, so we'll cool things down. But it's also going to cause a lot of flooding as well. So look out for a lot of difficulties for Florida residents getting about. Let's talk about mandatory evacuations, and yes, they have begun. As you can imagine, it's mostly on the coast of the western part of Florida. And here is weather.com keeping a running list. As of this recording, here is a list of counties that are impacted. So citrus, mandatory evacuations are ordered to residents in Zone A, which includes everything west of Highway 19. And then you have Gulf, you have Hillsborough County, and descriptions of which zones are impacted there. There's Manatee, Pasco, Pinellas, Sarasota, Suwannee, and Taylor. So this might be a good resource to check if you are in a mandatory evacuation zone. And then we have other websites here among many. Here's one for floridastorms.org. And there's a little FAQ here, to go or not to go. It says monitor local news and pay attention to alerts from authorities. Evacuation zones are designated from A to F. Generally, Zone A is most vulnerable and most likely to be evacuated first, with Zone F most likely to be evacuated last. Throughout the stay in a public shelter, if you need to evacuate, your safest and easiest option may be to stay with friends and family outside of the evacuation zone or in a stronger house. So that's some advice there. And then if you go to these other websites, If you don't know exactly what zone you're in, you can go to this website here, floridadisaster.org. There's a link here to click to know your zone map here. So if you do that, you get something like this. And then you can type your address in here, and then it will zoom in and tell you where exactly you live. So if I do something like 123 Main Street, Palm Beach County, Florida, it will tell me I'm in Zone B here. And then I can click here to get more information to see if I am under a mandatory evacuation orders. Now, this is the east coast of Florida, so I doubt they'll be under mandatory evacuation orders as of this moment. So let's talk about Hurricane Idalia impacting gasoline shortages. And here's an article from the Miami Herald that talks about price gouging, of course, that could happen. Unfortunately, it's still a thing here. And what's interesting about this article, it makes a good point about after the hurricane passes. I think that's the worst part of the hurricane, right? Is the aftermath, the down power lines, the long lines, the gas and fuel shortages, things like that. So here's a resource, Gas Buddy Tracker. You might want to use that to find where gas stations have available gas. I think that's a good resource. It talks again about the price gouging during a storm. What is also, I think, an underreported fact is there was a recent fuel contamination issue on Florida's Gulf Coast. So Florida officials on Sunday warned of potentially widespread fuel contamination, which could actually ruin your engine, from some 24 Gulf Coast gas stations. The bad fuel, which would have been purchased after 10 a.m. Saturday, could harm or disable engines. The gas supplied out of Port Tampa Bay by Citgo became contaminated because of quote unquote human error, according to an alert from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. Here's another article that delves a little bit deeper into that. And it might be a good resource to read upon in the Citgo situation there, affecting 29 stations that we know of, sold at chains like 7-Eleven and BJ's Wholesale and other convenience stores in cities including Tampa, Fort Myers, Sarasota, and more. So be on the lookout for that. So if you are thinking about evacuating, especially to the interior of Florida, here's an article that's reassuring. This is from the Tampa Bay Times. The title is Florida Hotel Chain Offers Hurricane Distress Rates for Idalia Evacuations. So the subtitle here is Orlando's Rosen Hotels and Resorts is reducing room prices and waiving pet fees as the state braces for this major hurricane. And I believe they've done this in the past as well. The article goes on to talk about how it's lowering prices ahead of Idalia. The hotel chain announced Monday it activated distress rates for Florida residents who want to evacuate inland. Rooms start at $69 per night, and each hotel is waiving pet fees. There's a quote here. This is an unexpected expense, not a staycation, Rosen Hotels Director of Guest Contact Jennifer Rice Palmer said in a statement. Idalia is forecast to become a major hurricane, as you know. And okay, so they talk about evacuation orders, stuff like that. And the article makes a good point here. It's illegal for hotels to raise rates during a state of emergency, which Florida has been under since Saturday. Businesses cannot price gouge essential items like lumber, ice, water, generators, or shelter before or after a storm. If consumers suspect price gouging, they should report it to Florida's Attorney General's office. Rosen Hotel said it's reducing rates so evacuees can save money during a storm emergency. Rosen Plaza rooms start at $99, Rosen Center at $109, Rosen Shingle Creek at $129. The prices do not include taxes. The rooms offer free Wi-Fi. There's a quote here that says, "We do this because it's the right thing to do. Safety of our guests, associates, and families across Florida is something we will go to great lengths to protect." So there are probably other hotels offering similar deals as well. So be on the lookout for that. If you are evacuating, stay safe and do not take any unnecessary risks. Let's talk about power and electric utilities in Florida. That's obviously going to be a major factor as the hurricane passes through. Power will be lost across Florida. So just as background here, there are 54 power utilities in Florida, and they are divided into three categories: investor-owned utilities, such as Duke Energy, Florida Power and Light, Gulf Power. There are also municipal utilities, which are owned by local governments, and then there are rural electric cooperatives. So There's a little summary table there. Now let's take a look at the Tampa Bay area here. Here's an article about Duke Energy and their preparations for this storm. And so I think they make some good points here. And so Duke Energy Florida, which supplies power to most areas of Pinellas and Pasco counties, mobilized about 4,500 power line technicians, vegetation workers, damage assessors, and support personnel in response to Hurricane Idalia. Now, if you go further down this article here, you see some good advice they're giving out. Turn off and unplug non-essential electronic devices. If evacuating for an extended period of time, switch off your home's power at the main breaker. Okay, so other tips are turn refrigerators and freezers to their coldest settings before the storm. It makes sense. Gather supplies to use in the event of an outage, including flashlights, batteries, portable chargers, radios, and first aid kits. Obviously, avoid power lines that have fallen or are sagging. Assume that all lines and any trees or limbs that touch them are energized. Now, if we go to the outage map here, and you do have the ability to check this during the storm, I think this is one good resource. This is from Duke Energy, outages in Florida, and this is a current look. So this is before Hurricane Idalia, of course. It hasn't arrived yet. And it's about less than 48 hours away. So here you have 4 customers affected here in the northwest of Florida, 317 in the Tampa area, and 140 here. Obviously, these numbers are likely to go up across Florida here. And you can track this by clicking on it and then zooming in. You'll get a better granular view of what's going on. Here's 160 in this area, and you can kind of track what's going on there. So I think that's a pretty good resource for tracking power outages. On to our next Hurricane Idalia story. This one is about Publix that won't sell hurricane cakes this year. Now, if you read this particular article, it goes on to say the Florida-based grocery chain Publix has decided to stop baking or selling its popular and divisive hurricane-themed cakes this year. Since I didn't realize that this was very divisive, but the article goes on to explain, despite going viral in past years for its storm-themed confections, which typically depict the state of Florida with an impending storm spiral and text along the lines of "Leave Florida alone," Publix has decided that after the mass destruction of Hurricane Ian in 2022, making fun of natural disasters is perhaps in bad taste. There's a quote here that says, "Our associates make every effort to support our customers during weather events. Oftentimes, this includes finding ways to delight them with their favorite Publix items as they prepare for uncertainty. For these requests in particular, it is our company policy to not produce bakery cakes that would make light of a natural disaster." Similarly, here's another article that goes on to explain it as well, and they refer to these hurricane cakes as hurricakes, as you can see here. And more or less the same sentiments are being expressed here. They don't want to make light of hurricanes that cause death. My only question is, there are merchandise items and other things out there, t-shirts, that also make fun of Hurricane Ian in a very light way, and yet those are still being sold. So I'm a little confused why Publix would take this route. I don't think anyone, at least most normal people, would take offense to these hurricakes, and they are very tasty, by the way. Let's actually take a look at some of the cakes they sold in the past here. Now, as you can see here, this was Hurricane Irma over here, and then I think I saw Hurricane Dorian image down here somewhere. But anyway, there's some creative ones here. There's a surfboard, little beach there. You got the spiral effects as mentioned in the article. And yeah, here's Hurricane Dorian down here. So you get a little idea of what these cakes look like. Now on to our next Hurricane Idalia story. Well, there you have it. Are you ready? Are you prepared for this hurricane? What are your plans? Are you evacuating or staying put? Do you have any hurricane tips to share? Let me know in the comments below, and stay safe out there. Until the next Florida-centric video, see you all soon. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some hurricane preparation to do myself.
For more awesome content, like and subscribe now.